Sup, guys, we're here for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Council. Welcome to the top 10 countdown of the top 10 most important cards to side for this motherfucking format. Now, the reason I'm putting this list together is because of you guys. You guys need something besides the guide to your sides that you could just go to, reference, and say, what's the most important cards to use? And then you could just go to this video and be like, oh, okay. So, just so we're clear here, these are opinionated by myself, so I'll give my reasons why, but that's not saying that anything is worthy less than anything else. Everything on this list is fantastic, and you should take a look at it. If there's something that you feel I didn't mention, make sure to sound off in the comment section, so that way the community itself, who comes looking at this video like, yeah, okay, what's the best ones, they can actually see it for themselves and get other opinions outside of myself. Hence why I always tell you guys to sound off. Coming in at number 10 is Flying Sea. I know what people are going to say. It's easy for a lot of decks to jump over, but I digress. There's a couple decks coming up that they're rogue-based, to be fair, but you know what? If you're playing meta and you got a bad matchup against that rogue, you don't want that Cyber Dragon Infinity comes to the board, play that Flying Sea, drop it on the board, feel good about yourself. And the reason I say this, swap Frog, Tree Toad, deck with the hero version, with the freaking Dynamis version, and Dynamis can make Tree Toad and Cyber Dragon Infinity off the Bahamut Shark combo, which requires 2 level 4s, and I know that's an incredible, difficult setup, but it is possible in Dynamis if they play Max C against you and you take the Max C challenge, and, well, it's a whole nother headache. The point still stands is that Flying Sea is a great counter to the Tree Toad deck. It's also a great counter to Bahamut Shark, which decks that shouldn't be going Tree Toad will go Tree Toad, and then you could just be like, well, hold up, drop. And you can't make that rank 4. You can't make that Bahamut Shark. And since they're stunned, you have a chance to, basically hit the enabler. This is pretty much what you want to focus on. Effect Veiler also works in that degree of hitting Bahamut Shark, because that's going to be the card that spits out Tree Toad for you. You don't want to just focus on dropping Effect Veilers everywhere when there's going to be so many, this card cannot be targeted by monster effects, or this card protects itself. You want a card that's going to just generate advantage for you, but at the same time you want something that's going to stun your opponent. This is what you go for, Flying Sea. My number 9 pick is something that the meta decks can use against you, or you can use against the card Demise kind of style decks that like to play really big, heavy back row, or anything that's going to run floodgates that's going to instantly stop you from playing the game. That is Royal Decree. Royal Decree has proven itself time and time again to be the one big card to say, you know what, we're not going to have this. Eternal Soul's coming out. Dark Magician will not be meta relevant, but it will be a problem for certain decks that can't handle it, that have good rogue matchups but bad matchups against Dark Magician. Yes, that's an actual thing. Then you can play this against Eternal Soul, for example. Your main use is going to be against something like PK or Burning Abyss when they try to Fire Lake, or Vanity's Emptiness when it pops up. Or better yet, if you're a Pendulum player and your opponent plays AntiSpell Fragrance against you, your only other counter is a Twin Twister, Cosmic Cyclone, MST that is well timed. You can have the Royal Decree, nullify the Anti-Spell Fragrance, play your Pendulums, drop on board. You don't have to worry about Strike, you don't have to worry about Warning, you don't have to worry about Ultimate Providence, you don't have to worry about the Magispectre trap cards. That may be a thing. Oh, and you also don't have to worry about the Ying Zing counter trap card, which is coming out in Invasion Vengeance. And if you're curious about the dates for those, there's the Rewind series, which you could pretty much go. It's a giant informative video. Yes, I am selfishly plugging my own shit. But Royal Decree is great for the simple fact that it just comes on out and it goes, you know what? No trap cards for you today. It is a Jinzo that can be Twin Twistered. Yes, true. And no, Jinzo would not be better because certain situations you can't garner that advantage over your opponent to sack a monster off to make the Jinzo play. Unless your deck is called Heretics or uses some kind of tribute engine, you can't get away with the Jinzo, and Decree is superior in that case, hence why it's our number 9 pick. Number 8, Imperial Iron Wall. ABC, Cosmos, anything that's going to banish your stuff anything you want to stop from banishing, mainly Cosmos, because ABC can counter to it. People are going to argue that, but that's why you make the counter argument back that, hey, breakthrough skill, effect filler when they go for the discard target, and no more ABC Buster. Player turn 1, no more ABC Buster. I ain't gotta see that crap on my board. I ain't gotta worry about it. In all seriousness, Iron Wall just stuns your opponent from banishing stuff out from their graveyard to use their secondary effects like breakthrough skill or any of the PKs that go for searching or revive a PK. That is just completely nullified. But the biggest thing that you're going to hamper is definitely going to be Cosmos, because that is the one thing that is still the kind of whatever Cosmos is going to do, even though they lost two Dark Destroyers in this meta that's upcoming. Oh, yeah, well, there's Imperial Iron Wall to completely shut them out and say, no Yu-Gi-Oh! For you. I still feel it's important because decks like Dark Lords, decks like Danklaw, Imperial Iron Wall just says, guess what? Dark Law can't activate his effect to banish out. My graveyard is safe. You guys just gotta have it up first. Allure of Darkness is, basically free to play because you ain't gotta worry about banishing out a dark. I'm not quite sure how the hell that ruling works. If I remember right, it's like sent to the graveyard instead or something along those lines. Again, I'm not quite sure because it's been a very long time. The last time I remember that ruling was right after Teledad, so it's been a while. Anyway, moving on to number 7. Maybe someone can answer what I was saying in the comment section. Moving on to number 7 is Ghost Ogre Snow Rabbit. As deities come in, as Metaphor variants come in, Ghost Ogre is going to prove itself time and time again to be better than it has been. You play the Ghost Ogre against the Metaphors that is going to target something, you pop it, and then it's one less skill to worry about. It's one less thing to worry about, especially if they get down to that last card when they play it. You play the Ghost Ogre when they go for effect. Done. Simple as that. Or they go for the second, you see them down to 2 cards. And they only have 1 on the field. It's not that hard to really time it. It just takes a little bit of patience. You can use it against something like ABC Buster Dragon, but then they get split. So that's not a really great example. You could hit their field spell card. That would be a pretty good hit. You can use it. Obviously, it hurts deities when they go to set up their scales. If they're going for scales, it hurts their continuous spell card. So that's a thing as well. I think you guys get the gist of it, so I want to move on to number 6. Alloy of Justice Cycle Reader. If you haven't been paying attention to this card and realize why it's $9, let me explain it to you. Not just Blue Eyes. ABC is a light deck that focuses on getting its counterparts, its parts into the graveyard, and if you banish them out before they can make the ABC Buster Dragon, you can prevent it. It is a cheaper version of like Winter Cherries. Winter Cherries is a more super aggro version that is a little bit faster and more aggressive, but for those situations, they work great together, honestly, because what will happen is they'll go for the Bujin, exceed that basically when they have 2 cards, and they're going to send it to the grave to, drop their hand, pick up 2 new cards. You play the Cycle Reader to that, you banish out 2 of their lights, and then they just sit there and go, oh shit, I don't have the components for a Buster Dragon, and you have more time to set up the Imperial Iron Wall, or the Kaiku Ghost Destroyer, for example, or just something that's going to completely nullify them. And sometimes, obviously, in this game, 3 Winter Cherries is not going to be enough, and people are hyping up System Down, but what you really should be paying attention to is the Cycle Reader you've been using against Blue Eyes has a second use in going against ABC, because against ABC, you can hit their graveyard counterparts and hit them hard like that. And obviously, it should go without saying, since the card's been around and in use for the past couple of weeks, that it also hurts the living hell out of Blue Eyes variants, so that's a thing too. My number 5 spot is AntiSpell Fragrance, because AntiSpell Fragrance is pretty simple. It's going to stop Metal Foes, because they can't set up their scales, and then they can't set up their scales, they can't play the game. It's going to mainly hurt Pendulum decks, but it slows things like Blue Eyes and, of course, ABC down, because most of the player base, as much as some of the player base does not like when I say this, most of the player base is going to focus on a rank 4 ABC deck. So AntiSpell Fragrance may not seem like it's going to do too much work, but you use AntiSpell Fragrance to protect your Iron Wall to make the game slower, because that's what you really need to do. However, the real use for AntiSpell Fragrance is going to be when we get to Deities and Dark Lords. Two really spell-heavy decks. Well, I guess Dark Lords are more graveyard-heavy, so there's that. But to the point against Deities is that it's going to slow down their spell cards. They can't set up their skills. They're not going to be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a good time for us all. Number 4. Macros Cosmos, Defissure, Banisher of the Radiance, or Different Dimension Ground. The reason I mentioned 4 cards and not 1 is because it comes down to your preference. 2 of those are limited, and I wanted to give you 2 versions. One that is a body and one that is a, one-time trap card, and one that obviously, well, 2 of that, obviously, once they're on the board, it's going to hurt hard. So you shouldn't just count on 1. So pretty much any form of graveyard removal is great this format, for sure, because there's too many graveyard-heavy decks. ABC, Dark Lords being a big one, Blue Eyes. Konami hyped up 4 certain decks. Those 4 certain decks, and I talked about this on Coffee Time not too long ago, were ABC Buster, I call it ABC Buster, but it's ABC, Blue Eyes, Dark Lords, and Deities. In reality, till we get to the whole deity side, what you really have to focus on is the Hero Frogs, Blue Eyes, possible Dark Lords. I'm not quite sure if they're in Invasion Vengeance. I believe they are, but again, if I'm not 100% certain on something, I usually say I'm not 100% certain, and I just quote it that way. Again, I haven't slept in about a day and a half, so just making that very clear, trying to get stuff done for Comic-Con New York. But to the point, what you're going to mainly use these cards for is anything that's graveyard heavy, like those decks. Ying Zing Metaphors is going to be pretty popular. They get hurt really fucking hard off the graveyard removal from the Ying Zing side, because you won't float with the Ying Zing. You'll float with your Metaphors, sure, that's cool. But guess what? You can't float with the Ying Zings. You can't go Boxia. You can't do what Madolches do with Tiramisu. Brilliant Fusion Tech. Yeah, okay. Play Brilliant Fusion. Boop. Get out of the graveyard. Guess what? That Level Eater that's a problem for you. Boop. Get out of the graveyard. No Dark Synchro here. It's all fine and dandy. That Mermail deck. Boop. Done. You don't gotta worry about it because none of them are activating their graveyard effects. My number 3 spot is going to Dimensional Boundary. Now, this card's not technically released until Invasion Vengeance, but hey, you call Exceed, Pendulum, Synchro, and I believe Ritual and Fusion. I know it's all the extra deck ones. You call one of those, and then for the rest of the turn, it's pretty much a Vanity's Emptiness, Cold Wave hybrid. In kind of the sense of Cold Wave kind of stuns your opponent from doing it for that one turn. That's what this does. You basically call Exceeds against Treat Toad, and Treat Toad can't, Treat Toad.deck can't do what it wants to. You call Fusion against something like Fluffles, they can't play their deck. You call something like Synchros against Dark Synchro, they can't play their deck. You get the point. It's pretty easy. It's self-explanatory. It's fucking amazing. There's no other way to put it. It's just fucking amazing. My number 2 spot, because I am just going to wrap this up, is Winter Cherries. Now, before you cut my head off and scream at me that Winter Cherries is not number 1, because ABC is the most broken thing in the game, to be fair, Winter Cherries hurts 2 real decks. But the problem is, and I'm going to be the guy who says it, not every deck can use Winter Cherries when you have to give up at least 2 spots to hit the 2 decks you really want to when it comes to using Winter Cherries. And that's being the anything Treat Toad variant, and of course, the ABC Buster. So not every deck can give up those 2 spots so easily when you need to focus on it. So obviously, I wanted to put something at number 1 that is going to be more coherent for all decks, not just one deck, okay? Just stay with me here and let me talk about Winter Cherries. Winter Cherries is fantastic. It is amazing what it does. And you reveal your ABC Buster Dragon in your extra deck that you stacked in there so you can rip out your opponents and they can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! However, There's going to be a few TCG players that insist on running Cyber Dragon Infinity, and it is a great comeback for it. I would also suggest Cyframe Lord Omega so you could put the banished ones back in and just piss off your opponent for playing the Winter Cherries. Hence, I was saying that knowing the TCG player base, they're going to adapt. So, I wanted to focus on something different for the number 1 spot. And I haven't mentioned it yet, so if you got it, kudos to you. My personal opinion on the most important thing is the Kaijus. Kaiju Slumber and Kaiju Sea Turtle. Or I guess if you want to do Kaiju Spider, because your deck can handle Spider better, if you're running a level 7 deck and you can special summon it, there's that too. Whatever is going to work better for you. I would say also Raw Spear Mode will be pretty important once we get to Tree Toad that deck, because there'll be 3 monsters on the board, you contribute all 3, and then bloop. Simple as that. Kaiju Slumber is today's acceptable version of Dark Hole. That is the best way to really phrase the card. You're not just blowing up your opponent's board, but you're slamming 2 giant behemoths on each side of the board, and at the same time, you get to choose who has a stronger monster. From there, in the following turn, you could banish out the Slumber and search out for a Kaiju, giving you another means to get something off the board. The only thing that Kaijus really have a problem with counteracting is Ophion, Christia, and Vanity's Fiend, and Vanity's Emptiness. That's 4 cards. And in those 4 cards, there's plenty of ways to jump around those 4. When you think about it, an ABC Buster sitting there, his fat ass on the board, and you want to jump over it without causing its effect to trigger, if I'm going to play Winter Cherries with a already established ABC Buster on the board and a Cyber Dragon Infinity possibly, Winter Cherries is not going to help me in that situation. And yes, you could say it's situational, but what if you don't go turn 1 and you can't play the Winter Cherries? What if you don't draw into Winter Cherries? I'm trying to allude this whole thing that you can understand my stance on this whole thing. So Kaijus are more proactive as they just instantly take out the ABC Buster. They can't banish out the ABC Buster or tribute it to get the 3 parts back. Then what you're just doing is you're basically burning out the ABC's resources by tributing out for a Kaiju. Every effort that they put into their boss monster instantly gets destroyed, instantly gets put out of its misery. Everything that you have a problem against, Tree Toad, it's going to stop you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But it can't stop a Kaiju summon. And you could say Lava Golem is a thing, but here's the problem with Lava Golem, and I said it time and time, and I'll say it time and time again. It is outdated, it is slow, and giving up your normal summon is too damn crucial, and you shouldn't be wasting your time on a Lava Golem with all due respect when you have multiple Kaijus, and any of them are much more acceptable, means to it. And if you really want something to take out multiple monsters in like 5 seconds, that's why I keep going back to that Winged Dragon Raw Spear mode, because trust me, from experience, I think I know what I'm talking about, because I do the research to get these videos for you guys. But the Kaijus are just a great out to everything in the game outside of those 4 cards I mentioned. And when you consider that there's over, probably right now, around 25,000 different cards, and there's only really 4 that are going to stop you, and I guess if you count Fossil Dino, that makes 5, that are currently legal that are going to stop you from playing the game when it comes to dropping that, that Kaiju. That is one hell of a side deck card to be using. So anyway, that's my top 10. I'll see you guys on the next video tomorrow. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy the content, you're brand new, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more. And I'll see you next Saturday for another top 10. Well, technically it'll be pre-uploaded by YouTube, so I won't be able to answer comments, but I will that following Monday after Comic-Con New York ends its giant freaking nuttiness. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace.